Hello there. Today we're going to be covering, thanks to a viewer suggestion who's reminded me that we had to cover this, pigments. There's going to be a basic, beginner-friendly, very simple breakdown of one way that you can use pigments. You will need basically some pigments and a brush. You don't have to have, put chocolate sprinkles on. You don't have to have a fancy coffee, but it might help. It's going to be very simple. You can test this out on anything. I'd recommend you test it out on a base. Please, just because I'm going to be using this on a base, don't think it can only be restricted to basing. You can use this in a load of different ways, but pigments are particularly amazing and wonderful for basing, and we're going to achieve something very good, very simply and very fast. It's pretty much impossible to go wrong. I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions about pigments, like do you need to seal them? No. I would say anyone who has any level of perceived intimidation about these, if you read anything that says that they are hard to use, it is wrong. Now, they're not 100% super easy to control, but you just kind of accept that lack of control at the beginning and embrace it. And that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to jump in. So for this, you will need some water, check. A brush, check. I prefer to use an old one, but a good one, and quite a big one as well. So a 4, 5, or 6. Obviously, if you've got a scruffier one, you can use that, but having a point on it is something I'm going to be making use of. You don't want it to hold too much water as well. If it's splayed, they hold water in a weird way. Quickly go over pigments. You can get them in any color, like literally any color. They are effectively paint without the wet stuff in. It's just very colorful chalk. Now we will see, if I go through mine, one of these weighs a fraction of the others and has BS written on the top. Not that type of BS. This is burnt sienna. Don't sneeze around them, by the way. Biggest thing you need to not do is breathe heavily on your pigments, because mess might happen. This is burnt sienna. See it jumping out there. They do want to make a bit of a mess. You just got to accept this. So put some paper down, don't have your snow-based models around you or something like that. That can go terribly wrong. But what we're going to be dealing with, we're going to be using just burnt sienna in the simplest way possible. You can buy one pigment and you can maybe never need another pigment if it's this one. Depends what you're going for. So I'm going to quickly dry brush our base, make it look a little bit fancier. I'll stencil a line on it as well with some masking tape, but just some normal dry brushing. We'll have a base that's good to go. And then with only these pigments, we're going to level it up very easily, simply, and quickly. Ashen. Sons of Horus green. Just make our rock a little bit more interesting. Celestial grey. If you want to see some videos on dry brushing terrain or bases, check it out. This isn't the focus of this video, but I am, of course, going to be using the Series D methods. So dampening pad, making sure things are not too dry. And this is going to enable us to get a pretty decent result quite fast. I will say that if you're using a base that you've made yourself with sand or cork or anything like that, it might be worth reaching for something like this to seal the base, because we are going to be making it very wet. And if you've used only PVA, or even if you've used superglue or something, the amount of water that you can use with the pigments means that it's quite easy to agitate, especially the sand off a base. So yeah, a spray varnish or just giving it a couple more coats of paint before starting, doesn't have to be thick or anything, will make sure that you're less likely to agitate these off in the future. Nice big brush. This won't be the best dry brushing I've ever done. I want to show you quick and dirty. All right, there, we already had an example. Don't worry, pigments can fix that. So if you do kind of agitate a bit of your base off, it's not the end of the world. Just remember where it is, and we'll be concentrating on that later. As ever with dry brushing, we're kind of holding out for that little payoff at the end when we use the final light color and things look all cool. We'll get there soon. You do not need much, even if it's a soft grey or not a strong paint. All right, it could have been slightly more subtle than that. That's all right though. Base is prepped. Time for a little stripe. Remove the fluff off the tape first somewhere else. And the most important thing when doing this is try and make sure that it's actually parallel. A few ways you can cheat on that. You can use another piece of tape as a guideline. think that looks about right. I think we're good. Dirty yellow for the good coverage. And obviously against the black, this should look pretty yellow, even if against another yellow like this, it doesn't. Now I've still got some grey in my brush, so this is going to harmonise with the colour underneath it pretty well. Let it dry, repeat. Keeping it just in the very tip of the brush, and only up and only down. Just make sure that you don't push it underneath your tape at the sides that you're using as a stencil. That should be pretty good. Final step is to dry brush from the edges, because this has been dry brush from the edges. And I'm just going to probably cheat a bit of grey. There we go. Let's try it. Clean my brush a little. Wet this brush and then should let it dry a bit more than that. Tidy up the edges, we're good though. So ideally, you'd let it dry a bit until you can take it off slightly more easily than when it's 100% dry, but not when it's still going to smear about. So I should have just been a little bit more patient there. But we are good to go. I lied, I'm just going to do the most careful, soft, final grey possible. It's just to tie things together a bit more. All right, so we have whatever we are going to be putting our pigments on, bases in this case. Next, you're going to need some little type of a tub. Now, if you're using something light, I get annoyed by it moving around when I'm using it or not being able to pick the angle as well. So a little piece of blue tack will be useful. But my preference is either a little metal dish or, right, my favorite, just a multiple dippy well palette. Now this is very dusty. So even if we are going to be using colored dust, I would recommend you give yours a little clean out before using it. So I'm just going to go and wipe this off and then we can get sorted. So I'm going to be using pigments in a couple of different ways. I'm going to be making them wet and applying them as a paste, and I'm going to be diluting that paste and pushing it around with a brush. It's basically a two-step process. So if you want to pick up your pigments easily, take a little bit of water and just pop it in. This brush is now contaminated. Do not use it for anything else until you've rinsed it very, very, very thoroughly. Okay, so our pigments are in here. Step one, we're just going to make a little bit of a paste. Take our whatever. I probably need more than that actually. It's not a small base. Now, keeping it as a paste at this stage is going to make it a little bit easier to get it exactly where you would like to. So I'm going to go for the recessed areas of this at the base of the rock, but you could just, you know, have a look at some pictures online, see some nature examples, or just dot it around randomly, or use it to hide parts of the base that you didn't think go well. Now that sounds like a good idea anyway, but it's even more a good idea because it's going to make your placement random, and that is one of the hardest things when doing pigments. You should either follow some rules like this goes in the recesses or the most sheltered areas, or on the flat ground or something like that, or try and be very, very, very random and haphazard with it and make it look like there's no discernible pattern at all. So placing this paste around, and it'll dry out pretty fast, especially if it's on a porous surface. Keeping it wet means that I'm not going to blow it anywhere. You can apply them dry. That's not what we're doing in this tutorial though. Okay, so I think probably that is enough areas for now. It doesn't matter if this isn't fully dry, like it drying out 100% is not a required part of the process. So what I need to do is wash my brush 100%. Do not use this paint water for anything else. Now, you can use this very dilute kind of final go of it as a way to just very carefully and in a really minimal sense put some pigments down over an entire surface. I really like doing that because, as you can see, we've added quite a lot of kind of realism to how this is going to look just by doing that. I'm going to let this dry though, because I don't want to touch that with my thumb while I'm working. Okay, zoomed in a little. So you can see how crazy this looks now. And this does look a bit inelegant, right? That's not a particularly realistic look. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be fuzzing it out and diluting it. And this is going to help it run into the recesses. But it's also going to make sure that it transitions into the part of the base where there's none or less pigment in a bit more of a natural fashion. So we're just taking pure water and then we're playing around on the edges of these. I'll do this in a couple of stages or steps. So wet the entire thing, then fuzz it out. Rinse your brush thoroughly because you do want there to, it's very easy for the brush to become impregnated with very strong pigments and then suddenly you're just putting pretty much the same amount of pigment everywhere. That's not what we're going for. We want it to fade in and out. You can drag it up areas if you want at this stage very easily. But one of the things I'm trying to avoid is anywhere like we had that section there where it's blatantly just kind of stuck because we hit it while we were working with the brush. You know, it's stuck on an outwards facing area, and realistically, these are going to be in the recesses more. There are other ways to use pigments, but for this way, I'm just trying to have them fade out and be naturally dotted around a few areas. Here's a good example. So this isn't looking particularly natural right now. Make it wet once, completely rinse brush, take off a bit of the water, and then just fuzz it out towards the edges. It's really good to see how it is when it's dried. If you're working on multiple bases, they'll dry naturally, or if you're just doing one at a time, then you can use a hairdryer or put it by a fan, or even the outlet of a computer will make pigments dry way faster. So I'm getting at risk there of kind of just making it all blend into one. For this base, that's not what we want to do. So I'm going to check a couple of other edges, soften them. And I'm going to dry it and we'll check out how it looks now. Right, I'm going to get really close up. So we're just fuzzing around the edges. This looks pretty good. We've got a denser collection of it and then it fades out up the rock. I'm just going to make sure it comes right to the edge of the bases. We'll be painting black rims over this, so don't make it look like you've tried to stop before you got the edge of the base, because really it should continue beyond where this base ends. Like we're trying to make it look like it's part of a bigger world, not a round base that we've painted in a circle. So at this stage, I'm trying to make sure that nothing is stuck on raised areas that shouldn't be, to make sure it looks natural. This area is looking pretty good. These rocks though, I'm going to give them a bit of TLC. Wash it off them as they're sticking up. This is probably going to be it, I think. I'm always dry brushing, like over brushing with a wet brush now. I'm just trying to rub it off the raised areas. This is the stage where if you would like to take this all over approach that I took on the top, you could do that all over, like every single bit of it. Just make sure that you're doing it with a very diluted mix. Like really diluted. All right then, let it dry and we'll see the final result. That's what we're going for. Few things can achieve something that looks that realistic, that fast, and you know, kind of that nature base. So I'm really, really pleased with that. One nice bonus of doing the part where we kind of wet dry brush stuff off the raised areas is if you want to do a final dry brush, you've now cleared the edges a bit more and you can without it instantly contaminating your brush. If you wanted to do a very light gray here, I'll show you that now. But your brush does run the risk of becoming contaminated. So you have to be really, really careful with this. Dampening pad, tiny touch. So we're being risky here. You need very light pressure and to be only hitting raised areas. Based on the palette, we are safe. Now from the edges inwards. And this adding together of one thing doing the recesses and one thing doing the raised edges, it's just really visually pleasing. And it's a very good way for two techniques to hold hands. Look at that. The brush is definitely going to be slightly more orangey now, but I think we just about got away with it. On the edge too. Amazing, look at that. Let's show it on some paper. See that slightly orangey. So those pigments, they do jump into the brush, but that's not something you need to worry about. Just give it a little clean afterwards. Your main concern is you don't want to start smearing like bright orange highlights when you're after a light gray. I'm going to give this a black rim. Should look amazing. It's just one of the fastest ways ever. Add blue guy to cool base. Done. Is this the best part of basing? Potentially, yes. Now remember that you can paint your base trim like literally any color you want as long as it's black. There we go. How it looks against the clean black rim is just super nice. You know, we've got a slightly satiny black here. This is Mini Colors black, very good base rim finisher. And then the ultra matte finish of pigments. Also, to do the check, licked finger. I'm not getting any orange coming off this. So people ask about sealing. I don't think that you need to do it if you're using your pigments like this, because really there's no way for me to touch where those pigments are at all. I quickly do another base for you. I'll skip through that in time lapse or something, and then we might put a tuft or two on just to finish. Aiming for these rocks. And conveniently, all the bits that I missed that were the blue basing color, they might end up with some orange on. Anyone who has watched the channel for any small amount of time will know how much I love tufts. So I'm going to use these not just because I love using tufts and any excuse is good enough, but I'm going to show you how to integrate them better with the base because I do think this makes a bit of a difference when you're using pigments. I'm going to use a long one, 6mm, and I'm going to use a tiny light green one. Of course, it's completely up to you what you want to use, but let's go for it. You can dry brush these while they're on the mat. Up to you how you want to do things, but I think these make all the difference. Also on this base, because it's got some footholds on it still, like we just have to cover them, so you know, it's kind of non-optional. 6mm is often too big, but I think here it's okay. Now, if you're putting directly on pigments, they might kind of stop your tuft from sticking, so be aware of that. It looks a little sus there. I think it's okay though. Is there anything more fun than tufts in the entire hobby? Anywhere where you've made a mistake, you can of course just cover it up. If someone's too full on, and you don't want to go back and fix it, you just hide it with a tuft. Lovely little 4mm mossy pad ones. I'm going to pop them right where it's sheltered. That bit of base is looking a bit blank, so tuft goes there. Of course, up to you whether you want to use them or not, but I love tufts. If you have used them, what I'd recommend is using very, very watered down pigments. You just put a little bit on. You put it on wet, it's exactly the same process. You can actually drop them on dry, but whatever you do, you just want to wash it down throughout it. You should probably stuck your tuft on. Once it's dry, it should look quite a bit more integrated. You can poke it around or you can blast it with an airbrush or a hairdryer. Stick them down before you hairdry them, otherwise they'll blow off and you'll lose them. Right, you just leave me here in my happy place. I'm going to be applying additional tufts.